My mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be always acceptable to you, our God and our Redeemer. Amen. Amen. In an interview with Time magazine given in 1979, Woody Allen said, "If my films can make one person feel miserable, I feel I have done my job." In some respects, many, after hearing these words of Jesus today, would say the same thing. The preaching professors in seminary always exhort us, comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. Today's readings convey something of the dramatic nature of our faith. This drama is something that is all too easy to forget about in 21st century America, where Christianity is the religion, at least in theory, of the majority, where fundamentalist Christians bemoan there is no prayer in the schools, where powerful politicians run for office proclaiming themselves to be good, upstanding Christians, promising to support family values. The Christian religion in this country and many others is the dominant religion of our culture. Respectable people go to church even if they are unmoved by anything that goes on in the liturgy or the scriptures. And here we have Jesus Christ, the founder of our faith, telling people that there are things that are a lot more important to him than family values. And here's a shocking revelation. The concept of family values was not very high on the list of Jesus at all. Jesus really didn't ever do too much to promote family values or family life. To the best of our knowledge, he was a single man at a time and a culture that did not respect the status of singleness or celibacy. In fact, when Jesus' mother and siblings once came to collect him, having heard that he had evidently lost his mind because of his teachings, he said, "My mother and brothers and sisters have come. Who are they? Who are my brothers and sisters? They are the ones that follow me." And in today's reading, Jesus says, "I have not come to bring peace to the earth, but a sword." And then, "Whoever prefers father or mother or daughter or son to me is not worthy of me." And what in the heck is he talking about? Is this the Prince of Peace talking? Is this any way to promote the so-called family values that are so high on the list of the so-called Christian right in this country? Ours is a very radical faith, and it demands pretty much everything of us. It demands commitment to be in relationship with Christ in prayer and to follow the call that he issues to us no matter what it costs. True discipleship may sometimes mean loss of family. It means making nothing in this life an idol. Part of the discipleship means being true to yourself. Think of the brothers who fought their own brothers in the Civil War against slavery. Think of the young person who resolutely refuses to go into the family business because they're called to do something different. Think of people who break out of long-established family patterns of racism, greed, family dysfunctional systems. Those systems try to pull them back, but they resist. And sometimes, unfortunately, that means following Christ's call to be yourself, to have abundant life, even at the expense of family. June, of course, we all know, can't forget that around here, is Gay Pride Month, and I know people who have lost the love of their mother, father, sisters and brothers and friends rather than live a false life, a closeted life of self-hatred. I had a very good friend in seminary who was deeply called to the priesthood. She was a lawyer like myself, and she had always been called to the priesthood, but when she was first called, women were not being ordained. And she decided to pursue priesthood around the same time that I did. Her husband threatened to leave her if she insisted on going to seminary. This was not what he had bargained for. when he married her. But she told me she knew absolutely what she had been called by God to do. Her husband made good on his threat. He left her with 2 children, furnishing little financial support. She sold their house at a loss, actually, moved to a cramped seminary apartment with her kids so that she could follow her call. Now, this doesn't mean we all need to lose our families to follow Christ, but it does mean keeping God and Christ central. When we do this, only good can follow. I think today's gospel reading has particular relevance in modern-day America. We now live in a country where people who proclaim themselves to be the ultimate Christians are the ones most zealous about excluding others. These ultimate Christians are terrified of anyone different, anyone of a different race or different sexual orientation, a different perspective on gender. They are even terrified of books, films, and discussions about the existence and history of persecution of racial, ethnic, and gender minorities. Don't say gay. Don't let kids read books about Jim Crow or slavery, or about the imprisonment of persons of Japanese descent during World War II. Some even deny that the Holocaust happened. Close your eyes, close your ears, pretend these persecutions never happened and aren't happening now. Pretend it is 1950 again. But the true followers of Jesus take to heart the injunction of today's readings. They speak out, they assemble, they persist in insisting on the rule of love, which insists that we treat one another as we would like to be treated. This is definitely happening here at St. Mary's, particularly in our spirituality and the state group led by Bill here. The true followers of Jesus do indeed sometimes find themselves at odds with former friends, with family members over such matters. I sure have. And many say, just keep the peace. Don't talk about these things with those who disagree. Jesus tells us differently. He tells us that we must not be ashamed to proclaim him. And those who believe we should all have arsenals of guns and ammunition in our homes, I've had them point to Jesus as saying he has come to not bring peace but a sword. But surely this is not to be taken literally. Remember, Jesus refused to let his own disciples pull out a sword in the Garden of Gethsemane. But the demands of the Prince of Peace may well feel like a sword cutting through lesser loyalties to families and friends and acquaintances, like a Gordian knot. Jesus knew this. Jeremiah knew this. In his work as God's prophet, which we heard this morning, Jeremiah was harassed terribly. The people of Israel didn't want to hear what he had to say. They threw him in a pit. They mocked him and humiliated him. He was preaching social justice, as well as preaching against idols. When I was a big-mouthed teenager at the dinner table, my father would say, "Don't ever be a prophet, Jill. People hate prophets." And night after night, we would argue about the Vietnam War. He was a World War II veteran, and for a long time, he took great offense at my objection to the war. Well, anyway, Jeremiah says he's become a laughing stock all day, yet he must cry out. He says, "God, you have deceived me." Is it deceived me? Well, anyway, the true translation apparently is, "You have seduced me. You have seduced me, and I have been seduced." My professor at Union Seminary, the great Phyllis Tribble, insisted that the correct translation is, "You have raped me. You have raped me, and I have been raped." But the authority, as I looked at this week, says seduce, so I'll stick with that. The last time I preached on this reading from Matthew, I was acting as a supply priest in this diocese in a church in Delaware County, not far from here. And I preached a sermon not unlike the one I'm preaching today. At least one man walked out in a huff. And then when the rector returned from vacation, and this priest was 30 years old. He was born in the year I started the ordination process. He called and reprimanded me for preaching politics from the pulpit. He said he wouldn't invite me back to preach in his church unless I agreed not to talk about the current ungodly and unchristian state of affairs in our country. Needless to say, I declined his invitation to return under those circumstances. You know, like most people, I want people to like me. I want people to get something out of my sermons, and it bothers me when people walk out on my sermons, and it's happened more than once. But I take the prophetic aspect of this vocation seriously, and like Jeremiah, I have to risk finding that people will find me obnoxious. I have a lot of experience with this from my years in litigation law. The psalmist in today's Psalm 69 voices a similar experience. He says, "It is for your sake I have borne reproach, that shame has covered my face." And of course, I can't resist saying the word shame appears in 1/3 of the Psalms. Shame, ashamed. I have become a stranger to my kindred, an alien to my mother's children. The insults of those who insult you have fallen on me. See, we're not the first people who have spoken out against present-day atrocities and been rejected for it. I know from my time here at St. Mary's that many of you are willing to bear the cost of speaking out. As a seminary friend of mine was fond of saying, we all choose which ditch to die in. And now is the time for choosing. Do we all go along to get along, or do we speak truth as we know it? Ours is a radical faith, a dramatic faith. Ours is a faith that demands commitment and sacrifice. As the great German martyr of the Second World War, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, wrote, "When Christ calls us, he calls us to die." Or in the words of today's difficult gospel, "Those who find their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake will find it." This means, in sum and substance, to be true to self, deaf to self. Hopefully not die literally, but die in the sense of shedding these false boundaries that separate us from each other and from the ultimate reality, the ground of being, which is God itself. It means to embrace the radical, dramatic, passionate, and astounding demands of our faith. Amen. Please stand if you are able for our